The hidden power of the pineal gland. Have you ever wondered, deep within the human brain, there exists an organ that almost feels as if it should not exist at all. It is no larger than a grain of rice. Yet the ancients called it the gateway to the inner sky. Some named it the third eye. Others believed it was the switch of spiritual awakening. And many dismiss it as mysticism, a fantasy for seekers and dreamers. But what if I told you the pineal gland is not a mythic organ? It is something far more unsettling. It may be a doorway, misunderstood for thousands of years. It does not help you think. It helps you see what you believe cannot be seen. You may have never noticed certain details. Why is it that in the deepest darkness, the clearest dreams begin to emerge? Why do some people during deep meditation report visions, flashes of light, or the sensation of being illuminated from within? And why do nearly all ancient traditions, from the sacred eye of Egypt to the Ajna chakra of India to the inner light described in Western esoteric teachings, hint at the same truth? Human perception extends beyond the five senses. Today, we will not indulge in cheap mythology. We will do something more dangerous and closer to the truth. We will place the pineal gland under three lenses of examination. First, what is it? Biologically, is it merely an ordinary endocrine gland? Second, why does the symbol of the third eye appear again and again across history? Who keeps repeating the same metaphor? And third, most important of all, if the pineal gland is indeed a doorway, where does it lead? And how can you approach it safely without losing balance, without slipping into delusion? You may treat this episode as an expedition. We will descend into the deepest chamber of the brain, as though entering a sealed temple. And when you leave, you may discover something unexpected. What opens is not the pineal gland. It is your definition of reality. So here is the question. If you have always believed you were awake, is it possible you have simply never truly awakened? The repeated hint of the inner eye. If the pineal gland were merely an ordinary gland, why has it been pointed to again and again across civilizations? In the temple carvings of ancient Egypt, the eye of Horus symbolized protection and divine perception. Much later, some observers noticed something unsettling. The sacred eye's internal structure bears a striking resemblance to a cross-section of the human brain, especially the region where the pineal gland resides. In Indian tradition, the space between the brows is called ajna. It is not a physical eye, yet it is named the third eye. Meditators are told, when awareness becomes steady, when breath grows silent, an inner light emerges within darkness. Then we move westward. In the 17th century, the philosopher René Descartes proposed something audacious. He suggested that the pineal gland was the seat of the soul, the point of interaction between mind and body. Descartes was not a mystic. He was a champion of rationalism. Yet even he, in the cold clarity of logic, admitted human consciousness seems to require a place of convergence. Modern neuroscience, of course, will tell you something simpler. The pineal gland secretes melatonin. It regulates circadian rhythm. It governs sleep and dream cycles. Nothing mystical, just chemistry. But here's the real question. Why is dreaming, a state so intimately connected to the pineal gland, precisely the condition in which reality becomes nonlinear? In dreams, time bends, space collapses. You meet the dead. You experience perception that does not obey physical logic. Nearly every ancient tradition insisted dreaming is not mere illusion. It is a rehearsal space where consciousness loosens its attachment to the five senses. And so, a forgotten question emerges. If the pineal gland regulates day and night, could it also regulate the shifting of awareness from outward to inward? During the day, light floods the senses. Attention projects outward. At night, darkness descends. Perception turns within. And at the very center of the brain, the pineal gland rests, like a suspended star in silent orbit. The ancients had no MRI, no neural imaging, no laboratory scans. Yet through symbol after symbol, they whispered the same message. The true eye does not sit on the face. It resides at the center of awareness. Over centuries, something changed. Humanity began to distrust inner perception. We elevated external data as the only legitimate truth. And slowly, the inner door closed, not because it vanished, but because we stopped looking inward. Now we must descend further. What abilities have truly been attributed to the pineal gland? Pineal awakening, third eye activation. These phrases circulate widely, but how much of it reflects real mechanisms? And how much is misunderstanding or even dangerous mythology? We are about to dismantle it, not to mystify, but to restore. Real mechanisms and exaggerated myths. If we remove all mythology, what is the pineal gland really? It rests at the center of the brain, between the two hemispheres, like a silent seed. Medically, it is an endocrine gland. Its primary role is simple. It secretes melatonin, regulating sleep, circadian rhythm, the biological clock. It sounds ordinary, but it is precisely this ordinary function that hides something essential. It determines when you enter darkness. And darkness is the field in which human consciousness most easily transforms. When light diminishes, the pineal gland becomes active. When external stimulation decreases, the brain shifts frequency. When rational control loosens, the subconscious begins to rise. You think you are falling asleep. From a neurological perspective, you are simply changing channels. This is the first layer of truth. The pineal gland does not create hallucinations. It regulates the switching of conscious states, like a power switch. It does not create the broadcast, but it determines whether another channel becomes visible. Now let us address the popular claims. The pineal gland secretes DMT. When it awakens, you will see visions. Decalcify it, and the third eye will open. These phrases dominate search trends. Pineal gland activation, decalcify pineal gland, third eye awakening signs. But here's the issue. Scientific evidence remains limited. The idea that the pineal gland releases large amounts of DMT is still largely theoretical. It has not been conclusively demonstrated. As for calcification, it is not a mystical seal. It is a common physiological change associated with aging. The real danger is not scientific uncertainty. The danger is mistaking an altered state of consciousness for a supernatural power. Many people meditate once, see flashes of light, and assume their third eye has opened. In reality, this is often the visual cortex discharging spontaneously in a low-stimulation environment. When the brain grows quiet, it generates imagery. That is not mysticism. It is neural activity. But do not misunderstand this. This does not mean the third eye is pure illusion. The real ability is not about seeing light. It is about whether you can remain aware of your own awareness. The pineal gland is linked to sleep, to dreams to circadian rhythm. And dreams are the only state every human enters daily in which consciousness reshapes itself. Every night, you practice entering another dimension. You simply call it dreaming. The question has never been whether a doorway exists. The question is, can you remain lucid while consciousness shifts? What has truly been misunderstood is not the biology of the pineal gland. It is the symbolic capacity behind it, the ability to move between layers of awareness without losing your center. And now we descend further. Why has the pineal gland been described across traditions as a source of inner light? What is that experience people call illumination? Is it merely a neural phenomenon? Or is it a structural shift in consciousness itself? Why is the pineal gland linked to light across traditions? Why have nearly all mystical traditions associated the pineal gland with light? Meditators often report, when awareness deepens, points of inner light begin to appear. Some call it spiritual illumination. Others call it a sign of third eye awakening. But have you ever considered the light may not originate from the pineal gland at all? It may arise when consciousness withdraws from external stimulation and begins perceiving its own structure. When you close your eyes, incoming sensory data slows. External information fades. Attention begins to return inward. Neuroscience describes this as a shift within the default mode network. Mystical traditions describe it as turning the gaze inward. 2 languages, 1 process. When perception no longer disperses outward, it gathers. And when attention stabilizes for long enough, the brain may generate spontaneous luminosity. This is not divinity descending, it is awareness becoming aware of itself. This is the critical turning point. Many remain at the level of experience. A few move into the level of observation. Experiences fluctuate. Observation stabilizes. True awakening is not about seeing light. It is about realizing that the act of seeing can itself be observed. That shift changes everything. The capacity, often called the third eye, is not about visions, not about apparitions, not about mystical spectacle. It is the ability to remain aware within any state of consciousness, aware while awake, aware within dreams, aware when emotion surges. The pineal gland, as regulator of circadian rhythm, symbolizes precisely this: the capacity to transition between states. It reminds you, consciousness is not a single channel. You have simply grown accustomed to one of them, a safe way to approach the inner door. If the pineal gland truly symbolizes the ability to shift between states of consciousness, then how should we approach it? Not by forcing it open, not by chasing visions, but by cultivating a quieter and far more stable capacity. There is a simple method. Few people practice it seriously. Tonight, as you prepare to sleep, do not immediately reach for your phone. Do not let your thoughts scatter. Turn off the lights. Lie down. Gently place your attention at the space between the brows and the center of the brain. Do not strain. Do not expect light. Do only one thing. Observe the darkness. You may begin to notice that darkness is not empty. It moves. It has texture, a faint grain, a subtle shifting. Occasionally, a dim point of light may appear and dissolve. Do not chase it. Do not resist it. Remain aware. The purpose of this practice is not to open the third eye. It is to realize something far more important. Even when the external world closes, consciousness continues. If you can remain aware for even a few seconds at the threshold of sleep, you are cultivating a rare ability to stay centered as consciousness changes state. That matters more than any vision, because the true door of perception does not exist to show you other worlds. It exists so you can remain stable in any world. Closing the pineal gland may not grant you superpowers. It will not awaken you overnight, but it reminds us of something far more profound. Human perception has never been limited to 5 senses, and consciousness has never existed in only one state. For thousands of years, this small gland has been misunderstood. Some have turned it into a sacred myth. Others have dismissed it as meaningless biology. The real power may lie somewhere in between. It is a doorway, but a doorway does not open itself. What determines whether it opens is not the gland. It is whether you are willing to look inward. Perhaps the question was never, what can the pineal gland do? Perhaps the real question is, if you learn to remain aware within darkness, will you still fear the unknown?